Hello, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Flight Sim community. This is Fighter Strike 95. Hope you're all doing well here today. On this afternoon stream. Welcome back, everyone. It's been a long while. Our first stream back since November 9th, all the way back a couple Sundays ago. I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you guys had a really nice time while I was gone for a bit. Happy Black Friday, everyone. So make sure you guys get your shopping deals and stuff. But today we're back with our game day this week. And there could have only been one flight we could have picked for this weekend's flight. And that is, of course, the legendary college football rivalry, simply known as the game. Or more specifically, it's Ohio State versus Michigan today. Which, if you guys aren't aware about it, it is the biggest rivalry in American sports. And trust me, the United States has some really great sporting rivalries. But this is the biggest one of them all. Think of this as the college football equivalent of the Spanish El Clasico. These two absolutely despise each other. And these teams have first met back in 1897, featuring the two of the winningest college football programs of all time, having won tons of national championships, conference titles, and such, legendary players, and more. So that is what we're doing today. We're going to talk all about the history of this rivalry, as well as some of the accomplishments these programs have had, and we'll go over how important this rivalry truly is for both sides. So before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone, and wanted to say hello, go over our today's flight plan. So we're here in Cincinnati's Lincoln Municipal Airport. So from Lincoln, we're going to fly over downtown Cincinnati and fly over the University of Cincinnati. Then from there, we'll head northeast to the U.S. city of Dayton, Ohio. So we'll fly over a bit of the University of fly over to University of Dayton in Dayton, Ohio, home of America's home of aviation, of Wright Pat. Then from there, we'll head east and we'll make our way to Columbus, Ohio, the capital of Ohio, also the home of the Ohio State University. So we'll visit the campus and, of course, visit the Horseshoe, Ohio Stadium, under 3,000 people and full of legendary moments. And then we'll make our first stop here at the Ohio State University Airport. That's where, conveniently, that's where we're going to stop for the first time. Second leg will take us through here. We're going to head up north and make our way all the way up to Bowling Green State University. 1 Golf 0 at Bowling Green State University, home of the Falcons, of course. From there, we're going to head up north into Toledo. We're going to visit the University of Toledo campus to visit the Toledo Rockets, a huge rival, by the way, another really important one in the state. Toledo and Bowling Green, one of the most underrated rivalries in college football. Then, of course, we're going to cross the state border into Michigan, and we'll make our way over. We'll do a brief flight into Ypsilanti. Of course, the big one, Ann Arbor, and more specifically, we're visiting the University of Michigan at the Big House, where they're hosting the game today. This weekend at the Big House, the largest stadium in the Western Hemisphere, 110,000 people attend games. And then, of course, our last stop is Ann Arbor Municipal. That is how this flight's going to be panning out today. Just some simple flying, of course. So before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone. Devil Duke, I did look at the information. Thank you. For the music, of course, I use YouTube Music, but for some reason the music I was using, which is Stream Beats, the non-copyright music, for some reason is no longer there. So it's on Spotify as well, but I don't really pay for an account like that anymore. So no music, but thank you for asking. And yes, happy Thanksgiving to all of our American people yesterday. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. So let's go ahead and get this started, of course. let's go ahead and get this X-Cub started. Go ahead and get this bad boy started. So I hope you guys are having a good weekend so far. Got some really cool stuff going on, of course. So there were a couple games we picked this week, by the way. So I actually had a couple game day flights here on my document we could have picked as well. By the way. There's a couple ones we could have picked here today. So here's some of the ones we could have very well picked today. So here's a couple ones that I actually could have very well picked. We had the Packers-Lions on Thanksgiving. That was one of the NFL games this week. We also had the Chiefs and Cowboys as well. Weekend, of course. And all that. But the other game I was really considering as well was Auburn, Alabama. That's a huge rivalry in the States. Maybe if Auburn was good again, I could have picked that one. And then, of course, World Football, they had the big El Gran Derby, Sevilla and Real Betis. But unfortunately, though, it's just not a really fair comparison when you have Ohio State and Michigan as your big game this week. So, not really much of a contest, honestly. We're going to go ahead and climb up to 1,500 feet. So we're going to climb up to 1,500, fly around downtown Cincinnati. We'll get ready to get this rivalry thing talking about, of course. So we're going to climb up to around 1,500 and fly around downtown Cincinnati for a bit. So here we go, guys. We're flying around to, this is Cincinnati, Ohio. This is actually the second largest city in the state. Very well known thing about Cincinnati, of course. The college program here is a Bearcats, actually. They've been playing college football since 1885. And they did pretty decently this year. They're 7th in the conference, though. But they're doing pretty all right this year for Cincinnati football. So they're doing pretty well this year. So let's take a bit of a snapshot for the downtown Cincinnati, of course. You have the Reds ballpark, Great American Ballpark's here as well. That's home of the Cincinnati Reds baseball team of the Major League Baseball. And then up here is Paycor Stadium, home of the Bengals. The city's well-maligned NFL team still hasn't won a Super Bowl. That's turnover. We're going to go ahead and this is downtown Cincinnati, whole city. So over to our right, of course, is the University of Cincinnati. University of Cincinnati, home with the Bearcats. They play at Nippert Stadium, one of the oldest ones in college football, by the way. Nippert's a very old stadium. Seats around 30,000 people. So here's Cincinnati, and there is the campus of the University of Cincinnati, of course. So here's the University of Cincinnati. Pretty cool university, though. Let's go ahead, guys, talk about our topic for today, Ohio State, Michigan. This is obviously the game this week about. Here we go, guys. Ohio State versus Michigan. This is the big game, the biggest game in the college football schedule, if not one of the biggest games of the regular season, is Ohio State, Michigan. Where do I even begin with this rivalry? It is the single biggest college football rivalry on the calendar. This legendary rivalry is played annually by the University of Michigan and Ohio State, the Wolverines and the Buckeyes. And as of 2024, Michigan has the most wins in college football, and Ohio State is second most in Division I. Of course, this game has gathered profound national interest as many games have determined the Big Ten title, as well as the Rose Bowl and even national championship aspirations. This legendary rivalry dates back to 1897, and it's known. ESPN has even ranked this as the greatest rivalry in North America, ahead of so many other ones in North America. It's also considered to be one of the greatest American sports rivalries of the 20th century. And even Encyclopedia Britannica even said that this is one of the greatest sports rivalries in the world. So yes, this is a very special game, and tensions and emotions run very high in this matchup. There's no question this is a very much elite game, and of course, both these programs have also been featured extensively in College Gameday, would originate from the game site. It is because, and it's in fact, it is the most viewed college football game of the regular season. The whole entire world stops for one Saturday in Columbus or Ann Arbor, depending on where they're playing this year. Of course, this year's game is in Ann Arbor, but basically, they hate each other for 365 days of the year. They just don't like each other. So the history of this rivalry dates back to 1897 when they met for the first time. However, the origins of this rivalry go even further back, funnily enough. You see, the Toledo War kind of was a thing that happened in 1835 and 1836. And if you guys don't know about this part of American history, the Toledo War was a boundary between the states of Michigan and Ohio over the city of Toledo. And apparently Ohio really wanted Toledo for the inland shipping and stuff. And ultimately, the boundary was solved and the dispute was ended when the United States gave Toledo to Ohio. However, in exchange, Michigan got the Northern Peninsula, which we know back for our 50 state series, we've actually found out that it actually benefited Michigan a lot more. That being said, That being said, the memories might have still lived on. And the inaugural game that was held in Ann Arbor back in 1897 resulted in a massive lopsided victory for Michigan, winning 34-0 over the Buckeyes. Now, they didn't meet in the next 2 years, in 1888, 98, and 1899, but played again in 1900. And it foretold a long Michigan winning streak, with Michigan winning or tying every game between 1897 and 1812, before it was postponed for several more years. Most notably, during that winning streak, Ohio State's alma mater, Carmen, Ohio, was actually written on the train ride home in the 1902 contest, where Ohio State lost to Michigan by a massive score of 86-0. 86-0. Yikes. Of course, things changed when Ohio State eventually became a member of the Big Ten back in 1912. And Michigan then rejoined the conference after a 10-year absence in 1917. It now became a conference matchup. And the first ever conference matchup between the two was in 1918, with Michigan prevailing 14-0 and launching its 7th ever shutout of the Buckeyes. And the rivalry has been an annual fixture ever since. The next year, Ohio State finally won its very first ever game in the rivalry, thanks to legendary halfback at the time, Chick Harley, beating the Wolverines 13-3. And then, of course, the Buckeyes won the next 2 contests to bring the record at that point to 13-3-2 in favor of Michigan. Harley's prowess spurred the university to build a new stadium for Ohio State football, and it's simply known as Ohio Stadium, one of the biggest stadiums in college football. 103,000, and one of the first games here at the stadium with a record 71,000 fans. Unfortunately for the Ohio State fans, they got shut out by Wolverine 19-10. Of course, Michigan would then win the next 5 games of this rivalry until Ohio State picked the next 2 victories of the decades, and by the end of the 1920s, Michigan led the series 19 wins to 5 losses and 2 ties. And then in the 1930s, Michigan won 3 out of the 4 contests in 1930 and 1933, and twice of those years claimed the national championship. Of course, the big thing that happened here during the 30s was also Francis Schmidt as well. Of course, then afterwards, in 1938-40, Michigan won the 3 games during that time. And the 1940 game in particular, they beat Ohio State 40-0 in what some people consider to be the greatest Michigan team of all time, thanks to the tailback tandem of Tom Harmon and Paul Cromer. One very interesting thing that happened during the 40s was 1941, where Ohio State and Michigan met each other for the first time with each team in the AP poll, and that game resulted in a 20-20 tie to iconic Giants and Ann Arbor. Of course, during World War II, Howard Yerges led Michigan to a 7-3 victory over Ohio State. Fun fact about him was that he actually played for Ohio State in 1943 as a freshman, and freshmen were eligible to play during wartime. Then he actually transferred over to Michigan, becoming one of only 3 players to ever play on both sides of the rivalry. Of course, during the 40s, teams were both ranked, and they won 5 of the next 7 games of the decade. The rivalry became a little bit more lopsided, 30 wins, 12 losses, 14 in favor of Michigan. However, the 1950s was another interesting era as well. The Snow Bowl happened in 1950. Eighth-ranked Ohio State was scheduled to host the game in November 25th in one of the worst blizzards in Ohio record. And Ohio State, who led the Big Ten, opted to cancel the game. However, Ohio State refused, and it ended up being a pretty bad game for them, as Michigan won the game 9-3, securing their Big Ten title in birth. However, this actually ended up being a big change for the rivalry, because Fessler's play calling led to his resignation, and they hired a new coach. and he's one of the most famous coaches ever in college football. Woody Hayes as his successor. And if you guys aren't aware about Woody Hayes, let me just tell you he's been a very fiery personality, very fiery temperament, but he's also considered to be Ohio State's greatest coach. And between 1951 and 68, under Woody Hayes, Ohio State won 12 of the 18 contests, including a big victory in 1957 and attended over 100,000 fans. And he closed this gap significantly since then, as it went from 30 to 12, 14 by the mid-century mark to only 37 and 24 in favor of Michigan. He closed the gap significantly, Woody Hayes. But of course, the most heated part of this rivalry happened during one major hiring, when Bo Schembler replaced Bump Elliott in Michigan. And it sparked a massive part of the rivalry, simply known as the 10-Year War. And it led to a massive rivalry starting on November 22nd, 1969, as Hayes led his top-ranked Buckeyes to face Schembler's Wolverines. And it ended up being a defensive battle, which Michigan won in a big upset, 24-12. A moment that sparked the 10-Year War. That part ended up deciding not only between Big Ten Conference titles, but also the Rose Bowl and even the National Championship. And this is also where this rivalry became especially heated. It hit some of the strongest teams Ohio State and Michigan have ever had against each other, and 4 times between 1970 and 1975, Ohio State and Michigan were both ranked in the top 5 between that. Of course, out of those matchups 4 times, Michigan only took one of those wins only once. Michigan's graduating class in 1975 sure won the Big Ten title each year, but only went to the Rose Bowl once. Of course, during this infamous 10-Year War, Woody Hayes actually coined the phrase "that state up north" and "that team up north," so he wouldn't have to even say the words Michigan. Yeah, and that's still a phrase, and that still lives on today in this rivalry. Both these college football programs, absolutely hate each other. And that 10-Year War was absolutely a brutal set of games. Of course, Michigan won those rivalries between 1976 and 1978. As they shared the Big Ten title 6 times, Michigan won the game each year, and Ohio State failed to score in each of those contests. The 10-Year War was ended in 1978, though not in the way you would expect it to be. It turns out Woody Hayes, being his violent, temperamental self, punched a Clemson linebacker during the Gator Bowl that year, and it ended up being his final game ever, and he resigned. At the end of the tenure, the rivalry stood between 42, 20, and 5 in favor of Michigan. Of course, Earl Bruce took over the Buckeyes for Woody Hayes, and had pretty much split the series 5-4 against Schembler's Wolverines between 1979 and 1987. It is actually considered to be the most balanced stretch of the rivalry. Then, of course, the 13 games then afterwards, John Cooper took over, and his 13-game tenure were dominated by Michigan, and they became especially dominated by Michigan, going 10-2-1 during that stretch. Eventually, Schembler coached through the 1989 season, and he turned over the reins to one of his assistants, Gary Mueller, and he led them for 5 more seasons until a longtime Michigan fan favorite coach, Lloyd Carr, took over in 1995. Some of the most notorious matchups of that era took place in 1993, 1995, and 1996. Ohio State entered the game each year undefeated, only for Michigan to absolutely beat those teams. Michigan had ended those games. Of course, Ohio State won the contest in 1998, and Michigan went on to win 1999 and 2000. Following enough, in those games as well, one of those games was Tom Brady was part of that. Yes, Tom Brady was a Michigan Marine. However, there was one more big thing that happened during the 21st century. And that was, of course, Jim Tressel's arrival to Ohio State from Youngstown State. And Jim Tressel put a special emphasis on this rivalry when he entered Ohio State. And during his first year, Jim Tressel registered the first defeat of the Wolverines at Ann Arbor in the rivalry in 14 years, beating 26-20. And it turns out that during the Jim Tressel era, Ohio State has been extremely strong during the Jim Tressel era at Ohio State. In 2006, of course, was the game of the century. For the first time in the history of the rivalry, the two rivals faced off in the top two of the BCS rankings during that point, and it became an absolute classic. And in the end, of course, it was an Ohio State victory, 239, securing Ohio State a chance to play in the national championship against Florida, only for them to realize that Ohio State didn't win the championship. Florida beat. Of course, after Lloyd Carr's retirement back in 2007, which included a 14-3 loss to Ohio State, they hired Rich Rodriguez from West Virginia to be their coach, which ended up actually being a pretty bad decision, as Rich Rodriguez was not a very good coach, and Jim Tressel continued to dominate the Wolverines, extending his winning streak over Michigan to 6 games, the longest in the rivalry's history for Ohio State. Of course, then Rich Rodriguez was fired, and they hired Brady Hoke as their new coach. And Brady Hoke actually won his first meeting of the two in 2011, as Ohio State also had to replace Jim Tressel with Luke Fickell. Then, of course, after Luke Fickell left, Ohio State then hired another coach, Urban Meyer, and Ohio State then continued to do really well in the rivalry game. And as a result, Ohio State still continued to win, of course. And Ohio State still continued the rivalry, of course. Then another part of the chapter changed. Then the Michigan Wolverines hired Jim Harbaugh, who was the former Michigan quarterback for a couple years. The rivalry became even more competitive during that time, as Michigan won the big game, and of course, 2019, after Urban Meyer left, Ryan Day took over, and overall, Ohio State crushed Michigan in 2019. Finally, for the last part of this, in 2021, Ohio State and Michigan faced off in Ann Arbor, where both sides were the top 5. But in the end, Michigan won that game. In fact, they've won the last 4 games, including 2022, where Michigan got its first win in Columbus since 2000. Michigan then won the 2023 matchup 30-24, which was the first 3-game winning streak for Michigan since 1995 to 1997. This was also a big deal because this also secured them a national championship later on, so I'm going to continue on their way to a national title. And of course, in 2024 for Ohio State, they suffered their only loss that year last season to Michigan. So overall for the rivalry, of course, as of today and as of up to Saturday's game, Michigan still leads the rivalry 62 wins, 62 wins for Michigan, 51 wins for Ohio State, and 6 ties between the two programs. So that concludes a bit of the history of the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. Absolutely bitter. These two don't like each other at all. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of a break here from speaking a bit. So we're just about to arrive in Dayton right now. You guys all probably heard about Dayton, where the Wright brothers have actually come from. So that's going to cover a bit about Ohio State in Michigan. This is downtown Dayton, of course. So, a bit of background about Dayton, of course. Dayton is home to the University of Dayton Flyers, and they're very well known for their basketball program. In fact, you could actually argue that Dayton basketball is a huge deal. It's a national tradition here. Dayton basketball has been around um, since since 1903, and Dayton has had one of the best college basketball programs in the country, especially for mid-major. They have amazing fans. In fact, they're among the top 30 in attendance in the country. So, pretty big deal. That's Dayton. In terms of other sports stuff I wanted to cover, um, so a big thing I want to cover as well, locally, of course. Louisville basketball is doing pretty good. Big win in the Louisville Kentucky game, a massive win for the Cards. They absolutely got a massive win for Cards. And Louisville's continue to remain unbeaten. They beat Cincinnati on last Friday. And next game is against Arkansas. So the Cards rank 6th in the country. Louisville football has been really consistent, though, sadly. So there's that, too. Then for soccer or for football, Everton got a massive win today last week against Manchester United, despite being a man down in that game. They beat Manchester United 1-0. And the funny thing about the Premier League is, guess what? Everton's above Liverpool. Yes, it's real. You hear it here first. So there's that too going on. It's pretty fun. Guys, I hope you're enjoying this, enjoying a bit of the content here today. We're going to be heading over to Ohio State. So if you guys like this stream and want to continue supporting, smash that follow button. We stream 2 days a week, Fridays and Sundays. This Sunday we'll be going over to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. Should be a really stunning trip. So it should definitely be a very enjoyable day. So of course, for the Ohio State week, Ohio State's coming in as the #1 team in the country, and they're traveling at Michigan Stadium. So this should be a very good one this year. It's definitely the biggest game in the college football schedule this year. By far the biggest this week. The only other game this week that I think could compare it is Texas A&M and Texas, but we already covered University of Texas earlier, so I wanted to actually get a bit of a definitely some pretty big stuff going on this course. Let's go ahead and talk a bit about Ohio State, OSU, the Buckeyes, of course. I want to talk briefly about Ohio State. The mighty Buckeyes, of course. Ohio State, the Ohio State University. Yes, it's the Ohio. They play in the Big Ten. They play their games at the massive 102,000 Ohio Stadium since 1920. The Buckeyes have claimed 9 national championships, including 7 from the major wire service sectors of the AP poll and coaches poll. They've also captured 41 conference titles, 2 from the OAC, and 39 Big Ten titles, 10 division championships. They compiled 10 undefeated seasons, including 6 perfect seasons. Also, 7 Ohio State players have won the Heisman Trophy, second most of any college program, and they're uniquely have the distinction of having the only 2-time Heisman Trophy winner of the award, that being Archie Griffin. And it is the most valuable college football program in the country, as it was valued at $2 to $2.5 billion US. Of course, there are notable team symbols. most notably the Brutus Buckeye mascot, having debuted back in 1965, in the two fight songs Across the Field and Buckeye Battle Cry are its two major symbols of diversity. If you want to know the team colors, of course, Ohio State plays, their team colors are scarlet and gray. That is their team colors. Of course, you know, Ohio State plays at the massive Ohio Stadium. It is a massive ground called the Horseshoe. It serves as the home venue of Ohio State since 1922. Of course, it's known as the Horseshoe, the house that Harley built. It also just hosts college football games. It's also hosted the MLS for 3 seasons of the Columbus Crew before they moved out to a soccer-specific stadium in 1999. Also was a host for many of the OSU track teams. And many concerts were played here. Taylor Swift, Genesis, and Metallica have played at the venue. Pretty historic stadium, really cool ground to visit if you're a sports fan. It's also where the spring commencement ceremonies may happen here during the events, but there are a ton of events here. And yes, international soccer's played here too, including the Florida Cup back in, well, but of course, one really cool thing about this ground, of course, it has 103,000 people, but the record attendance for a game at Ohio State was back in November 26, 2016 against Michigan, where a record crowd of 110,000 people got to watch Ohio State versus Michigan. Extremely impressive. But yeah, really cool stuff. Of course, we all know Michigan is the biggest rival for Ohio State, and it shouldn't be a question. However, that being said, Ohio State has several other important rivalries in the matchup. Most notably, the first one of these two matchups is Illinois. Now, the Illinois rivalry dates all the way back to 1902, and it became the longest continuous series that Ohio State had, 2002. They played their 89th consecutive year. However, nowadays, ever since the Big Ten expanded, however, Ohio State and Michigan no longer met annually since 2014. The most recent match, of course, Ohio State has historically dominated this rivalry with 69 wins, 30 losses, and four ties. One unique thing about the rivalry with Illinois is the trophy they won. And in fact, the trophy is known simply as the Illibuck, which you see here on the picture on your right. That is the Illibuck. This is a carved wooden turtle and serves the winner of the games. 2 honorary societies, both of the Ohio State and Illinois, are responsible for the Illibuck. Originally, it was a live turtle, but of course, they had a couple of turtles that are carved each year. In fact, this is the second oldest trophy in the Big Ten programs, behind Michigan and Minnesota. Of course, the other rivalry Ohio State's had majorly was Penn State. When Penn State was added to the conference in 1993, quickly blossomed with a rivalry with Ohio State. Previously, we had met only 8 times prior to 1993, but it's been a divisional matchup and been a protected rivalry for the past years or so. Ohio State has dominated this rivalry with 26 wins and 14 losses, but this rivalry has only gotten much more intense over the last few years. It has only been a more intense rivalry, plenty of close matchups and memorable moments, of course. And in fact, this matchup has also got one more distinction too. It is actually the most common matchup in college Gameday's history. In fact, it's been a record 14 times have featured this rivalry. That's right. It is the most famous. It's the most frequent matchup on College Game Day, along with Alabama LSU. So pretty big stuff here. Now, in terms of notable Ohio State players, there are a ton of them to pick from. Ohio State has got a crap ton of legendary players, and it's not surprising a program of Ohio State's caliber um, has actually produced some legendary and iconic players. Where do I even begin with a lot of these guys? Ohio State players have won more major awards than any other program in the country. But of course, when we talk about legendary Ohio State players, the first one I want to bring up here to you guys is Archie Griffin, the only two-time Heisman Trophy winner of all ever. If not one of the greatest college players of all time, winning the Heisman Trophy in 1974 and 1975. However, he didn't really have that great of a pro career afterwards. He was drafted the 24th pick, but he didn't really have that great of a pro career following up. I guess his skills didn't translate into the NFL game very much. That being said, he's still Ohio State's greatest all-time player. Next one on the list, of course, is Eddie George, one of the other retired players of Ohio State. Played in the 1992-1995. He won the Maxwell Award, Walter Camp Award, and even a Heisman Trophy winner as well. And he went on to have a really solid NFL career too. Especially if you're a fan of the Tennessee Titans. Probably know Eddie George pretty well. Next player on the list is Jim Parker. Very well known player as well, Jim Parker. Then after Jim Parker, we have the iconic NFL coach, Dick LeBeau. Dick LeBeau, the legendary quarterback, he had a pretty solid college career, but he especially became more well known during his tenure in the NFL. He became an extremely successful quarterback in the NFL. He was a big part of the Detroit Lions, but he especially became well known as a coach as well. Very well known Pro Football Hall of Famer for both as a coach and player. Then, of course, we have Chris Carter, the legendary NFL receiver. Chris Carter, of course, some of the best hands the NFL has ever seen. Especially blossomed during his time in Minnesota as an 8-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. And his number 8 is proudly retired by the Minnesota Vikings, of course. Then we have Orlando Pace, who's also in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, drafted first overall by the St. Louis Rams. And he put up a legendary Hall of Fame career, 7-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro. He won a Super Bowl in 1999. And of course, he was all part of the all 2000s All-Decade team. Very impressive player and definitely one of the greatest Rams. Then we have Randy Granishard, the most recent Ohio State player to make the Hall of Fame, and a legendary star of the Denver Broncos during the 70s and 80s. Amazing linebacker. I mean, it took him long enough to finally make the Hall of Fame, but while he's finally in there, he's earned it. Then we have wide receiver Paul Warfield, major wide receiver during his time in the NFL from 1964 to 1977 with the Browns and Dolphins. Um, Definitely a star receiver. Then we have Lou Groza. Here's a funny thing about Lou Groza, of course. Um, Lou Groza actually became a tackle and a place kicker during his time in the NFL. He played for the Browns and became one of their all-time greatest players. Um, 6-time All-Pro. He won the All-American Football Conference 4 times. Then he became a 4-time NFL champion as well for the Browns. And a 9-time Pro Bowler, too. Yes, back when the Browns were actually good football. at American football. And Luke Groza became especially notable as a kicker. And he developed place kicking that's still influenced today. In fact, he's been such a notable player that the Luke Groza award for the top place kicker in college football, was named after him. So that's why I put his name on here as well. And finally, there are many, many, many more legendary Ohio State players that I could pick from. There are too many of them. Are just the most notable Ohio State stars. So that's all the people I picked for today, and we just arrived in Columbus, Ohio today. So I hope you guys like this a bit. The Buckeyes, of course. So I hope you guys are enjoying this trip. Yes, we are flying really low to the ground here. I hope you guys are enjoying this trip. This has been a lot of fun, of course. Really low to the ground. I like this. We're flying really low. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I have a lot of fun with this. It's great to be doing this series again. Surly Deb, good to see you. Happy Black Friday, Surly Deb. Good to see you. Sorry, I've been looking at the notes for a bit. A lot of stuff going on. So for games this week, of course, for the Premier League, for England, of course, Everton's next matchup is, of course, going to be Newcastle United. It's tomorrow. Should be a good matchup with Newcastle. I hope Everton gets the win. That'll give them another 3 points. And the next Espanyol taking on Celta Vigo, which should be a good one. Looking forward to that on Sunday. Important matches. So which airports are your favorite in the United States? Good question. There's some really good ones, Devil Dude. Some of my favorites, I've flown in and out of plenty of them. If you're talking about commercial aviation, one of my favorites to fly out of is Eagle Airport, Eagle County. In Colorado is really cool to fly in and out of. That's fun. Aspen's pretty cool to get in and out of course. It's not an easy one. Of course, I like Vegas International. Las Vegas is really cool. The approach to Vegas is always a really fun one. Las Vegas International is fun. Tons of flying in and out of. That one's a bunch of fun in the United States. Those are some really cool stuff. And then for general aviation, there's tons of really good. I like doing GA out of Lake Tahoe. That's a beautiful airport. Tahoe is stunning for general aviation. That airport a lot. Sedona, of course, is amazing. Sedona's a joy to fly in and out of. Sedona's great to fly out of. Beach is really cool for general aviation. Of course, Bowman Field is my local. Bowman Field is one of my local ones. Is Bowman Field, really cool airport. That's pretty fun to fly out of my home airport. One of my home airports. But like I said, tons of really good options Double Do. There's some. And of course, you can't go wrong with bush flying in Alaska. I can tell you that much. Can't go wrong with the bush trip. So visit Columbus, the capital of Ohio, home. Now one major thing about Columbus, Ohio, um, it's actually the 14th most populous city in the country. It's actually a lot bigger than you think. The Midwest's second most populous city and the third most populous state capital in the country. Only Phoenix and Austin are both bigger state capitals than Columbus. Of course, Columbus has plenty of parks and attractions. Some major fairs. The Ohio State Fair is one of the largest ones in the country. It's also got a large amount of festivities during June and July, including Columbus Pride, which is one of the Midwest's largest gay prides. There's also Community Festival, and of course, it also has its own Oktoberfest. Well, and of course, they're bringing back the Sonic Temple Festival in 2026. Really cool stuff. Of course, Ohio State is the biggest team in the city, funnily enough. It's college, but it is the team of the city. But they also have two more major league teams. Next is the Columbus Crew of Major League Soccer. They play at the Scott's Miracle Grove Field. 20,000 people. They're one of the most well-known soccer cities in the country. Soccer. And the other one being the Columbus Blue Jackets of the NHL, playing at Nationwide Arena since 2000. But yeah, if you talk about the team of the city, it is Ohio State. It is the of Columbus. There's no question about it. We're gonna fly into downtown Columbus, and then fly over the campus of the Ohio State University, and we'll make a stop here at Ohio State University campus. So we'll stop briefly here. We'll fly our way up to University of talk more about other stuff too. So I wanted to ask you. So for our next game day flights, I think I picked out our next game day flight this week. Um, so I'm looking at the schedule and stuff, see where we're going to go next week, which is December 5th is next week. So I think as of this weekend, the game that I picked for this weekend, of course, is going to be a very tough one. So next week's on the schedule for next week is going to be our very first NHL game we're going to be covering here on the channel. Our first ever NHL matchup of our game day flights. And yes, it's an NHL game, but it's actually a very important NHL game. It's Canadiens and Maple Leafs. It's the only time during our game day series that the Canadiens and Maple Leafs will meet on the weekend. And if you guys don't know about Canadiens and Maple Leafs, this game is absolutely enormous for NHL. It hasn't just defined the NHL; it defines Canadian culture. And there are not many that can say they probably do. So yeah, we're doing Maple Leafs Canadiens next week. Be very excited to talk about some NHL stuff for a bit. Talk about the Leafs and the Canadians. Should be a lot of fun. But basically, the fight plan from there is going to take us through from CSK3, and we're going to go from Montreal over to Toronto. We're also going to visit Ottawa as well. Be a really interesting flight. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. It'd be a lot of fun to cover an NHL matchup. Trust me, we don't really do a lot of. I mean, there have been some other interesting matchups. I mean, I could have also done Benfica and Sporting Lisbon, Sporting Club de Portugal. The Lisbon Derby would also be a really good one. You also this week was also Dinamo Zagreb and Hajduk Split. In Croatia was also a pretty nice one too. We cover Croatia for a bit. And there was also the Lakers versus Celtics, but that's across the country, man. So I had to pick Canadians Maple Leaf. Wanted to do something a little different, but it's a really good one. I'm very, very excited to cover here on this channel. And I'm having a blast these game days. I'm having a lot of fun learning more about the clubs and learning more about the teams, of course. But there are a couple games. There's actually already a couple ones I've actually got planned, by the way. Um, I've already got a couple ones planned for the next several weeks. Um, then after next week's stream on the 12th, Devil Dude, if you're still here, I got good news for you. Devil Dude, you're here. I got good news for you because on December 12th, it's Ajax Feyenoord. I got that one planned. The biggest rivalry in the Netherlands, Ajax Feyenoord. We're gonna cover the Dutch leagues. We're going to the Netherlands, baby. That's one of the ones I got planned as well. These two are absolutely huge clubs. These known as D Klassieker, biggest game of the Netherlands. I know Ajax aren't doing so well this year. PSV's been taking command of Eredivisie, but I still want to cover it since the Netherlands is not usually a place to do tons of flying. So, cool. Yeah, yeah, those two. But yeah, you're going to be quite a happy camper when we talk about these two clubs. Both Feyenoord and Ajax have had amazing players. Oh, so this is downtown Columbus, the capital of Ohio. I mean, it was a tough one though because it was also Army versus Navy, which is a huge game for us American college football fans. Army versus Navy, and then of course Sunderland and Newcastle land. And of course another one planned. The Bears and Packers face off against each other. There really isn't very many other games I could pick, so I picked Bears versus Packers of the NFL. That's one planned. Then December 26th, the Christmas weekend, will be a tough one, but I got Oilers versus Flames. The Battle for Alberta, that's always a very good game. That's a classic NHL matchup. Oars and Flames is one I got planned. Another NHL game, but it makes sense. And then, of course, January 2nd is a big one. Is normally I would have covered Espanyol Barcelona, but no, January 2nd is going to be Celtic Rangers Old Firm. So here's, guys, if you look to our left, here it is, guys, Ohio State University campus of the Ohio State University. And there is Ohio Stadium right here. So this is Ohio State University, of course. Next to the stadium is the Morrill Tower. St. John Arena is there it is, Ohio State. there's the Buckeyes, baby. But, that is Ohio Stadium. You can definitely see how big this stadium is. Here's the crazy thing. It's not even going to be the biggest stadium we're visiting today. It's a massive ground. That's some of the ones I got planned. I know Celtic Rangers aren't doing so hot this year in Scotland, but it's Old Firm. It's the biggest rivalry in the United Kingdom. I would not be stupid enough to not do that game. So that's going to be the next couple of streams coming up. But yeah, that'll be the next couple of weeks planned. Of the next couple of weeks I got planned for this series. Here we go. We're going. This on or off? My voice is on. Thank you very much. Good to see you, Laurie Martin. I hope you're doing well. We're making our way to our first stop of our game day flight. We're doing Ohio State, Michigan today. We're about to arrive into the Ohio State University airport. For another installment of this iconic rivalry between Ohio State and Michigan. I posted a video in my Discord if you guys ever wanted to take a listen to it about how this rivalry became a big deal. It should be under the game day flight section. So I hope you're doing well, Laurie Martin. So we're about to make our landing of the day. here we go, guys. Our landing. First landing of the day. Not the smooth landing. So we'll stop here for just a bit. Yep, it is on MSF's 2024. Yes, it's MSF's 2024. Yeah, I can understand if you have a less powerful system. Yeah, yeah, I wasn't checking how much I landed. Yeah, I understand if you have a less powerful system, MSF's 2024 can lag quite a bit. So we're gonna get ready for about a minute. We're gonna make our way up north. We're gonna head our way over to Bowling Green. So we'll talk more about Bowling Green, of course. We'll talk about Michigan while we get up there. So we're gonna go ahead and get ready for leg number 2. If you guys want to join on in before we get taken off, we're on the Southeast Asia server. Our route today here, pretty simple route, of course. So we're gonna go up to 1,500 feet. So that's where we're going here. We're heading this way. We're gonna head up to Bowling Green. So, so we're gonna be going here pretty soon. So we'll talk about the University of Michigan for a bit. So of course, about Ohio State, of course. before we talk about Michigan, there are a couple of other things about Ohio State I do want to cover about culture and lore. One of the biggest traditions here in Ohio State, of course, is their marching band. And their marching band is one of the best in the country, by the way. Um, Going back to 1878, this marching band is one of the few collegiate all brass percussion bands in the country. It's among the largest type in the world. And their most well-known traditions, of course, and their most famous tradition here by the University Marching Band is Script Ohio, which is a musical drill that's been performed here in 1932, performed in 1936. And this musical drill basically what this does. It takes about 3.5 minutes and performed the pregame. Starting out with the triple block 8-0, and it unwinds to form the famous letters of Ohio. And one unique tradition here, and one of the most important tradition, is dotting the I, which is considered to be the greatest honor the band can bestow to any non-band member. It's very rare. Only a handful of non-band members have actually dotted the I. Woody Hayes, Bob Hope, Jack Nicklaus, multiple OSU presidents, and more. Their marching band's got rich in traditions too, and all that as well. Pretty important stuff. Now, speaking of which, we'll talk about the University of Michigan for a bit. Hey, Super Pilot, good to see you. Hello. I hope you're doing well. First time in chat. I hope you're having a good day. I hope you got good plans for the weekend, of course. So we're doing the Ohio State-Michigan game for our game day flight. We're going to go ahead and talk about the University of Michigan as we're here. So the University of Michigan, founded back in 1879. Of course, this is the winningest program in college football history. The most all-time wins they've won in a very impressive 1,021 games. It's also known for its distinct winged football helmet, which has been a Michigan tradition here at the program. Of course, Princeton was the first one to use the winged football helmet, but Michigan used it in 1938, and it's still stuck ever since. Its iconic fight song, possibly the greatest fight song in college sports, "The Victors," dating back to 1898. And they've also known for its record-breaking attendance at Michigan Stadium and its rivalry, especially with Ohio State. Michigan has won an impressive set of titles, 45 league titles. Since the inception of the AP poll, has finished the top 10 39 times. The program has claimed 12 national championships, which puts them among the most of any college program in the country. In fact, in terms of clean national championships, only 3 other college programs have won more national championship claims. That being Princeton, Yale, and Alabama. Yeah, only those 3 have won more than Michigan. And on top of that as well, Michigan has won lots of legendary coaches as well. In terms of national championships claimed, their national titles include 1901, 1902, 1903, 1904, a four-peat, plus 1918, 1923, 1922, 1932, and 1933 back-to-back, 1947, 1948 in back-to-back years, then take over a 50-year hiatus in 1997, and then most recently 2023. Yes, Michigan definitely has some legendary programs and stuff. Now, interesting thing about Michigan though is its legendary fight song, "The Victor." The Victors came around in 1898. They written over its victory over the University of Chicago, and the abbreviated version of its song is played in Michigan sport events and functions, and it's considered to be one of the greatest college fight songs ever written. And of course, it was written by a Michigan student at the time, Louis Elbow. He wrote this song. Of course, its popularity is used all over for the University of Michigan. It's one of the greatest fight songs. So here's some of the tunes. So here's a little bit of it. Here's yeah, just a little bit of a sample. But yeah, that's the Victors. A legendary fight song, one of the greatest ever. Now, of course, Michigan's had some iconic legendary coaches over the years. So many legendary coaches, but of course, there is one place that Michigan is well known for. Now there's steam, of course, and it's the one, the only Michigan Stadium, aka the Big House. And you guys can't believe this, but this is actually the biggest stadium here in the country. The third largest stadium in the world, and the 34th largest sports venue in the world. Officially, it's around 107,000 people. However, it's hosted crowds in excess of 115,000 people. Now, to put this perspective, Ann Arbor's total population as a city is 123,000. So basically, you could fill up almost all of Ann Arbor on Michigan game days. In fact, the stadium was designed to allow that capacity to reach beyond 100,000. In fact, Julian Yost, who was once the Michigan coach at the time, envisioned a day where this stadium could hold up to 150,000 people. 150K. Um, which is absolutely insane, but thankfully that has not happened yet. But it's used by graduation ceremonies by the university. President Lyndon B. Johnson outlined his Great Society program in 1964 in the stadium. It's hosted ice hockey games, including the Winter Classic in 2014. It has even hosted an International Champions Cup match between Real Madrid and Manchester United, which reached a capacity of 109,000 people, which is a record for a soccer match in the country. It's insane just how big this stadium is. You guys are going to be, when we visit Michigan Stadium for this part of the tour, um, you guys are going to be pretty much blown away just how huge this stadium is. Massive. It was constructed all the way back it opened in 1927. It's almost 100 years old. This place is insane. It's once in a lifetime for a college sports fan to make at least one visit to Michigan Stadium. Yes, Michigan Stadium is absolutely massive. In terms of stadiums, there's only two stadiums bigger than this, by the way. Narendra Modi Stadium in India for the Indian cricket team, and of course the Ricardo First May Stadium in North Korea. That's it. That's right. This stadium is bigger than every other one. It destroys even European stadium. Yeah, look at it, you cop new. It's actually just a big. Absolutely, absolute crazy ground here. Hosted so many events. But yeah, it's like now the most people that ever attended a Michigan home game is back in 2013. Um, between Michigan and Notre Dame having a record attendance of 115,000 people attending that game. 115,000. Which is absolutely insane. It's nuts. It's a massive stadium. Of course, next thing about Michigan, of course, it's its other rivalries, and of course, a program as historic as Michigan's going to have other rivalries too. Ohio State isn't the only rivalry. The first of the major notable Ohio State Michigan rivalries we're going to cover is, of course, its state rivalry with Michigan State, dating back all the way to 1898. However, it's been a conference game since 1953. And they met every year since 1945. 118 meetings have been played between the two, and Michigan has historically dominated this rivalry, 75, 38, and 5 all time. In terms of trophy games, since the trophy era, Michigan has led 42 to 29-2, which is significantly closer since the trophy finish. Now, of course, the reason why Michigan had dominated this rivalry is because Michigan State only won 2 games and tied 3 others in the first 28 years. However, since then, it's been significantly closer. But of course, one unique thing about this rivalry is its trophy. It's literally known as the Paul Bunyan Trophy, which we see here on the picture. Now, this trophy has been dating back to 1953, and they introduced it, and it's a 4-foot tall wooden statue of Paul Bunyan, as it reflects a lot of Michigan's history as a lumber producing state. And ever since the Trophy Series, it's been significant. Michigan still has won the series, but it's been much closer. But there's been some really crazy moments between Michigan State and Michigan. Absolutely crazy games. Most notably, the 2015 game was particularly unbelievable, as Michigan State won on a fumbled snap by the punter, causing Michigan State to win that game. It was embarrassing. And then, of course, their second rivalry is with Minnesota, the Little Brown Jug. Dating back to 1892, it's the most regularly exchanged college rivalry trophy in college football. It is the oldest trophy game in the FBS. Of course, Michigan has possessed it every year since 2015, and Michigan has completely dominated this series, 78, 25, and 3. Which makes sense. Michigan's been historically a dominant program, and Minnesota hasn't exactly been nearly successful. But the Brown Jug is pretty big, though. The Brown Jug has actually been around since 1903, by the way, when it was originally used by Fielding H. Yost, who was the Michigan coach at the time, painted it with victories of each team. And that rivalry has been here ever since old Brown Jug. Michigan has historically dominated this. Finally, the last major rivalry, there's a couple of other ones. Penn State, Illinois are other rivals too, in Northwestern. But the other most historically important rivalry Michigan has is with Notre Dame, actually. Makes sense considering Notre Dame and Michigan are not very far apart. And they haven't had nearly as many meetings, only played 4 times since their first game back in 1887. However, Notre Dame, this rivalry is especially important as these are 2 of the winningest programs of all time. As well as having some legendary moments between the games. Of course, it was a huge rivalry back in the older days. In this rivalry, Michigan leads the series 25, 17, and 1 in 24 meetings. But they won't be playing their next game against each other, however, until all the way in 2033. So you're going to have to be waiting 8 more years for this to happen again. So that covers about the historic Michigan rivalries to cover, and these are the historic games Michigan has to go against. Now let's talk about the last slide for today, and that is some of the legendary Michigan football players. Of course, Michigan, being the program they are, has had some legendary players. Their rich history, of course. Of course, the first player we have on our list is his name's literally in the picture, and the famous Heisman pose you all probably have seen it quite a few times for the Heisman Trophy. Yes, that is none other than Desmond Howard. He actually played 11 seasons in the NFL, but he became a legendary college player. Helping won the Heisman Trophy in 1991, and he mainly became a punt returner, a special teams return specialist, where he became pretty well known for the return specialist. Win the Heisman Trophy, and of course he did his famous Heisman pose. That is still a symbol to this day, and everyone did it. Athletes, presidents, celebrities have all done the Heisman pose. It's definitely one of those famous things, and of course Desmond Howard's on this reason. Next legendary Michigan player is actually one of the most interesting players Michigan's ever had. And yes, I'm not kidding, Gerald Ford, actually. Now, wait a minute, you've been asking, wait a minute, Gerald Ford, you mean the same guy who was actually the president of the United States? That's right, that Gerald Ford. A lot of people don't know about this, but Gerald Ford was actually started as a center in 1934. He was voted the most valuable player by his teammates in the 1930s. Of course, he played in college ball in Michigan, and he helped Michigan get to 2 national championships in 1932 and 33. But he was the star player at Michigan, of course. And of course, you all probably know what happened with Gerald Ford after his career in Michigan. He became part of the U.S. Naval Reserve. Then he became a House of Representatives and eventually became the President of the United States. Gerald Ford. After Gerald Ford and another notable Michigan player, Ron Kramer, the legendary offensive lineman who's had a legendary NFL career for the Green Bay Packers, one of the all-time greatest offensive linemen. 2-time NFL champion with the Green Bay Packers, part of the 50th anniversary all-anniversary team, and was a big part of leading the running game in Green Bay Packers under Vince Lombardi. Absolute legend, all-time greatest. And of course, after him is Dan Dierdorf, who's had a legendary Pro Football Hall of Fame career. Played for 13 seasons from 1971 to 1983. St. Louis Cardinals of the NFL, now known as the Arizona Cardinals. Played for Michigan and was an All-American. 6-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, part of the All-Set 1970s All-Decades team, has built a Hall of Fame career for the Cardinals. And afterwards, we have, of course, Charles Woodson, who also won the Heisman Trophy. Is Charles Woodson. He's had both a amazing college and pro career as well. Star cornerback for both the Raiders and Packers. During his NFL time, he was a 9-time Pro Bowler, 8-time All-Pro. He won both Defensive Rookie of the Year in 1998 and the 2009 Defensive Player of the Year. He won a Super Bowl and part of the 2000s All-Decade team in the NFL. But during his college career was actually something special, and that was during the 1997 season. He became the 3rd player in Michigan, in the most recent Michigan player to win the Heisman. And yes, he won it over Peyton Manning, all players too. And he was the first primarily defensive player to win the award. In fact, he was the first primary defensive player to win the award, which hasn't happened again until all the way in 2024 with Travis Hunter winning the Heisman Trophy. At the time, he was the only defensive player to win the Heisman Trophy. he had an absolutely insane season during his junior season. Um, and he played for, and he had an amazing season during his college career. Definitely one of the iconic Michigan players of all time. Of course, you have guard Steve Hutchinson, who's had an amazing NFL career, one of the best offensive guards. Then, of course, you have Ty Law, the star corner, who played Hall of Fame career for the NFL, played for the Patriots. Became a big part of the Patriots dynasty during the 2000s. Tom Harmon is another big one as well. Another Michigan legend, Tom Harmon, star running back during the 30s and 40s. He also became a military pilot, actor, and broadcaster. Has had a great, very long career. And then Aiden Hutchinson, who's one of the best modern Michigan Wolverines currently. In Hutchinson. And finally, of course, and there are tons of other Michigan legends all over the place. So that is covering the legendary Michigan stars, and there are so many to pick from. Like I said, where do I even pick the stars for Michigan? There are just so many of them. Too many to pick. Now, in terms of other colors too, Michigan's colors are the maize and blue, which is their school colors, as well. Oh, got some pretty big stuff coming up too. Well, of course, they got a lot of traditions here. Um, a lot of traditions here, of course, for Michigan. Got tons of rivalry. So, yeah, definitely some pretty big stuff going on here today. We're gonna go over and visit Bowling Green, so that'll be our next stop. So we're gonna about head our way over to Bowling Green State. So a bit about interesting thing while we're heading to Bowling Green for our next stop is because Bowling Green State's a pretty interesting little program here. Bowling Green State is going to be where we're gonna head stop. The college football program here is actually dated back to 1919, known as the Bowling Green Falcons. They wear the brown and orange, of course. And they play in the MAC conference, the Mid American Conference. and they play at the Dwight Perry Stadium, 33,000 people. But the other reason we're flying over Bowling Green and Toledo on this next leg is going to be because these two are pretty heated rivals. If you can tell, they're only separated just 20 miles apart from each other, and it's one of the best mid-major rivalries in the country. I mean, clearly both Bowling Green and Toledo have tied the series currently at 43 apiece. Um, but for Bowling Green State, this program's produced a lot of very well-known some really important, some pretty important individuals. Most notably, Paul Miles. He is the only player who's retired their number. He won the Offensive Player of the Year of the Mid American Conference. And he's known as the greatest running back in the history of the MAC. But he's had a great college career as well. Bowling Green's pretty cool stuff. It's a nice little local game, definitely. I'll go here. In terms of other stuff going on here, in this as well, for next week, of course, on later today, Murphy's gonna be back on his channel, of course. Merck's gonna be back on later today. He's gonna be doing his, I believe his next flight is going to be in Ecuador. So should be a stunning flight in the Transall. Should be a stunning flight in Ecuador. Should be a lot of fun, of course. And then tomorrow, Allison Johnson's going to be doing her recreation stream. Going to be doing the going to fly from Galveston, Texas, over to Tallahassee, Florida, in New Orleans. So should be a really fun flight. Tomorrow should be really enjoyable, of course. You know, Allison Johnson, she's an absolute legend in the community. Love, been a huge fan of her stream for years. So, should be very, very exciting, of course. Looking forward to that. Finally, and then of course we'll be back Sunday for our national park in Rocky Mountain National Park. We're gonna have plenty of mountainside landings and stuff throughout the. here we go. We're going to turn left here as well. Now, one really interesting thing I do want to point out to you guys, of course, about some college football programs in Ohio. I know we covered a bit about Ohio State, obviously, and we talked. There are plenty of other well-known programs in the state. We're flying to Bowling Green right now, where we're going to be talking about the Bowling Green Falcons. But there's also the University of Toledo. The Toledo Rockets are also a pretty well-known MAC program, having won quite a few MAC titles during its history, of course. Toledo's won quite a few conference titles. But yeah, so many iconic players of but there's also the University of Ohio in Athens, which is in the southeast part of the state. Um, but the MAC's got tons of programs in Ohio. There is Kent State, which is in Kent. That's not far from Cleveland, just about south of Cleveland. Kent State, well known for its head coaches. The Akron Zips in Akron, just south of Cleveland, it's Akron. You have the University of Miami Redhawks in the north southwest quarter of the state, which was most well known for where Ben Roethlisberger got his college career at, but also Miami of Ohio is where the Cradle coaches were from. The University of Miami of Ohio, producing guys like Paul Brown, Jim Young, Woody Hayes, Bo Schemblerger. Yes, both coaches of the 10 Years' War came from the University of Miami of Ohio. Jim Tressel, Sean Payton, Sean McAvey, and more all developed in the University of Miami of Ohio. So basically, what I'm trying to say is Ohio is where a lot of college football coaches were developed. Tons of talent from this state, of course. So we're about to arrive into Bowling Green. We're about to arrive here for the first time, and then we'll take a bit of a break, small break. We'll make our way over to the University of Michigan. It's definitely very impressive. So here it is, guys, Bowling Green, Ohio. So we're going to go ahead and prepare for our second landing of the day. So there's Dwight Perry Stadium, home of Bowling Green State. Of course, Dwight Perry was the most successful head coach in Bowling Green State University's history. And guys, landing number 2. Better this time around. Yeah, I'm liking the turnout today. Thank you guys so much for coming along here today for this Ohio State-Michigan matchup, of course. But yes. Start here. We'll be waiting for about a minute or two. Prepare for the second and final leg of the trip. Of course, this one's only about 61 nautical miles. Oh, by the way, yeah, it's not the greatest landing, Devil Dude. I know it's not. Like I said, I haven't done too much flying since I got back. I've been trying to be a little busy. So we're going to go ahead and prepare for the third and final. I'm doing pretty good. I got nearly most of the achievements. I'm starting to catch up with Firefire. I've just about catched up. I was gone. I haven't done as much flying recently because I've been playing a lot of Fallout 4. Trying to play other games, of course. That's why I haven't done a lot of Firefly Air. That's why I haven't done a lot of Firefly Air recently. Is because I've been trying to focus on another game. We're gonna go ahead and make our way over to Ann Arbor. Okay, try to get this back in line. So we're going to head up to Ann Arbor today. We're going to head up to the last leg of the stream here. this here, this is the Ohio State tours, by the way. Yes, you can take tours of both of the facilities, by the way. This is the Ohio State University tours. You can tour, of course, the facilities. So yes, you can tour the Ohio Stadium. It's one of the most iconic landmarks in college football, of course. Nearly 40 million fans have gone through the stadium's gates since 1922, and you can actually visit the stadium. And if you do the basic tour, you're going to go see the field, the press box, the Huntington Club, the Jet Landing, the President's Suite, and of coin as well. So yeah, $30 to do the tour of Ohio Stadium. You can also do the VIP tour for $10 more, which is really, so if you're an Ohio State fan, you can definitely check out the stadium tour for the Buckeyes. But yeah, really cool stuff. You can tour around Ohio Stadium. Like I said, it's really cool. You get to visit one of the work grounds. Learn more about Ohio State. Of course, if you're more of a fan of the uh if you're more of a fan of the maize and blue, you can also visit the Big House, and you could do a facility tour of the Big House tour. Go behind the scenes. You can book a tour for 10 or less, featuring a 9-minute tour of the club suite level. Of course, you can check out the Michigan Stadium field, the locker room, and the visiting media room. And yes, you can visit um but yes, you can visit the Big House, which would be really cool though. Imagine getting to visit the Big House. How cool would that be to visit one of the most iconic, the biggest stadium in the country? It'd be massive. So, of course, these are two of the big ones in the states. Now, in terms of other programs in Michigan, of course, the big two is Michigan and Michigan State, in Ann Arbor and Lansing, East Lansing, respectively. But there's a few other programs in the state. The other big ones, notable ones in the state, are Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan, and Central Michigan. So Eastern Michigan, we're actually going to fly over it on our trip, is located in nearby Ypsilanti, just right next to Ann Arbor. They're the least successful of the three other Michigan teams. Then you have Western Michigan, which is in Kalamazoo, just west of Ann Arbor is Kalamazoo. And that's home of Western Michigan, the Broncos. And then up more into the central part of the state, in Mount Pleasant, is Central Michigan, the Chippewas. And all three play in the same conference, and they basically play each other every year, which is pretty cool, though. Um, so, so, so the, right to our right is the city of Toledo. This is the city that Ohio really wanted to win over due to trade. Um, and this river is very important because this is the breadbasket of the state of Ohio. It's where they do corn and soybeans grow here. This part was why they wanted to get Toledo. But honestly, if anything, Michigan was better off not getting Toledo because Michigan got the Northern Peninsula, and that ended up being a lot better for Michigan because having control of all that lumber and other resources is so important. We're about to arrive in the University of Toledo. Now here's an interesting fun fact about Toledo that you guys don't know. So they play at the stadium called the Glass Bowl. That's the stadium they play at. And here's one really funny thing about the Glass Bowl. No joke, you guys would never believe this, but the University of Toledo actually got a real-life missile at the stadium grounds. Yes, they managed to get a missile from the U.S. military to get in the Glass Bowl. And you know what? Why they got it? So they can buy the missile and point it straight at the 50-yard line at Bowling Green State Stadium. Yes, they bought it so they can flex on their rivals. And I'm not kidding. I'm actually serious on this one. It's no joke. I'm actually being freaking serious. It's a real one-ton U.S. Army missile. Yes, it's real. I'm not kidding. Very serious. Oh, college football, man. It's America's answer to all the world football stuff, all the soccer rivalries and passion stuff. This is kind of our answer for it. It's like, because if you know American professional sports, they don't have nearly the same intensity and passion that the like soccer clubs like the in Europe and the rest of the world. This is kind of the United States' equivalent. You know what I mean? So So we'll see who we visit here today. Thank you all so much for coming along here today. We're going to So I think we're going to go check out MSFS 2024 as well. But we'll see where we're going to check out today. So I'm basic color. We're going to go ahead and switch tanks. We're going to switch tanks to the right tanks. Now cross into Michigan. 39 miles out. Hey, Super Pilot, hello. Good to see you, Super Pilot. Hope you're having a good day today. I hope you're enjoying the stream. I have a lot of fun here on this trip over to Michigan. This is a lot of fun, and I have a ton of fun covering this matchup today. But I'll talk a bit about Ann Arbor. So Ann Arbor has got some really cool stuff to do, of course. Ann Arbor, of course, the University of Michigan is very important here, and there are plenty of things to do here. And of course, the University of Michigan is a big deal. However, that's not the only thing that people can do in Ann Arbor. There's actually more than a few things you can actually do here in the city. Of course, Michigan's the big. It is a university town after all. But there's actually more things to do in Ann Arbor than you think. They got a botanical gardens in the university. They got a hands-on museum for kids. Carytown's the main shopping area here, especially a farmer's market. Of course, Michigan's got a beautiful campus, Main Street. They got a Kelsey Museum of Archaeology, which is over 100,000 objects from the civilizations of the Mediterranean. Really cool natural history museum. Michigan Theater. They got some really cool stuff here in this city for all sorts of people. And of course, they got some pretty interesting food here too. And of course, Ann Arbor has also got plenty of food too. And a lot of their stuff is local. Um, Lots of local food. Yeah, plenty of things to do in Ann Arbor. Really cool stuff. Ann Arbor is definitely a really neat college town. Yeah, oh yeah, you're more than welcome to join in. By the way, yes, you can absolutely join in. We're on the Southeast Asia server, and our route. If you look at the top right corner of your screen, it's the closest airport indicator, and our closest airport is Mike India 1-2. So technically, if you want to spawn in ahead of me, just in case you want to load in, you can load in on Kilo Yankee India Papa Willow Run Airport. You can spawn in there, which is actually the old Ford aviation factory site in Ypsilanti. If you want to spawn ahead of me, just in case. You're all more than welcome. By the way, you guys are more than welcome to join on in these group flights. Like I said, I don't discriminate. You guys are all more than welcome to join on in. So, you're all more than welcome to. This is still a group flight. That is a bit about Ann Arbor for you. So that bit of information about Ann Arbor. My day's going great, Super Pilot. I'm having a ton of fun here today on this stream, of course. Um, and this has been a very fun flight. We've been flying from Cincinnati over to Ann Arbor. It's been a lot of fun here. Got to talk about the history and do something I'm really passionate about. And sports has been a thing that's been in this channel for a long time. In fact, I've been streaming since 2021, and the first series I've ever done on Microsoft Flight Sim was by Play Ball series, where we visited all the Major League Baseball stadiums. Because baseball is a big passion of mine, so I'm very excited to actually get this Gameday series back. I wanted to do another sports thing since I haven't done it in a very long time. And we've been to quite a few destinations already in this Gameday series. By the way, we did our very first one of the Gameday series was October 6th. was actually October 10th, and we did Oklahoma versus Texas, the Red River rivalry. We got that started as well. Then we went to England next. We did Liverpool Manchester United, the biggest rivalry in England, in English football, which was a lot of fun. Then of course we did back into Spain. We did the Basque Derby, Real Sociedad and Athletic Club. That was a fun game. It ended up being a really fun game to watch too. It was a lot of fun. Um, then the last one we did before Michigan and Ohio State went to Argentina. We covered the biggest rivalry and one of the best rivalries in the world, Super Classico, Boca Juniors River Plate, which was a really fun one to cover. So, like I said, I had a lot of fun in this series so far, covering all over the world. That's why I want to do it. I can still fly around the world, but would be a lot more excited to cover something I have a lot of passion for. And I'm also excited to do on Sunday to cover the National Park Series. Which is also going to be a lot of fun. Covering our national parks, we got more than a couple of them already started. We're doing Rocky Mountain National Park on Sunday, so if you like national parks and want to enjoy it, we're going to be back Sunday to do it. Got plenty of stuff going on. So in terms of other games this weekend, of course, outside of my favorite teams, there have been some very big ones this weekend. In terms of world football, soccer, in the Premier League, another big game. Outside of that has been two pretty surprising teams, Sunderland and Bournemouth. Tomorrow would be pretty big. Of course, Everton playing. Serie A is going to have Milan and Lazio. Definitely pretty solid teams. AC Milan, led by the American Christian Pulisic. And Spain's got Barcelona versus Alaves. And by the way, Barcelona's back at the Camp Nou for the first time in a few years. They're back at the Camp. Been a long time. Germany's Bundesliga has got Leverkusen and Dortmund. Pretty nice. And then Ligue 1, the French league's got AS Monaco and Paris Saint-Germain. And of course, also is the final for the Comebol Libertadores of South America. The final game of the knockout tournament. And it's the final two teams in the final. Palmeiras and Flamengo. I almost did consider that, actually. I guess I probably should have, but... Oh yeah, no worries. Put the airport. Here you go. KLUK-KOSU. You can also spawn in at KARB. Well. You're more than welcome, Super Pilot. You're more than welcome, my dude. Like I said, I'm happy to help you guys in chat if you need me to. I may not be the most into flight sim tech and all that, but at least I am. So one of the more interesting things about but yes, by the way, guys, our next game day flight is going to be on the Canadians and Maple Leafs on next Saturday. So I'll be covering the historic NHL matchup between these two of the original six. Should be a lot of fun for this trip, of course. So it should be a lot of fun for next week. Fantastic. Ann Arbor, this should be nice. Thank you. So this is Ypsilanti, Michigan here. This is about, we're making our way to Eastern Michigan University, EMU. So the Eagles. Now, of course, fun thing about Eastern Michigan, where's your heading? We're heading to 6 degrees. It says 68 here, but it's because for some reason the X Cub doesn't really match very well with. The Eastern Michigan Eagles is what they call them. They're the least successful of the 3 MAC Michigan teams. And their stadium is actually Ryerson Stadium to our left. Most notably, the stadium is unique because the turf of Ypsilanti of their stadium is actually gray. Yes, they got gray AstroTurf. So we're heading close to this. Oh, I think here's the link for Murphy. In case, I don't know if you check your settings, it's something with settings, I believe. So Murph's got the link here, probably. I don't see it either. So I think it's something with your multiplayer settings. Just want to make sure it's not me. I'm just going to check my settings for just. Yeah. I have an Ultra. So I have this link here in case you have multiplayer help. That video can help you out with it. Murphy's a really good guy knowing about multiplayer stuff. kind of hit the thing he's done. So this is downtown Ann Arbor. I'm going to slow down this significantly. Not this plane. Fly over Ann Arbor for a bit. I also put a Discord link up in the chat too. If you guys want to join in on my Discord. This here is some bits of the university town. It's a very big one, in fact. Here we go. We're going to turn left. Make our way down to Michigan Stadium, of course. And of course, Michigan Stadium is going to basically be impossible to miss. No, literally, it's Michigan Stadium. This here is Michigan Stadium. 110,000 people. It blows every major other stadium, mostly every other stadium in the world, away in state capacity. That is Michigan Stadium. Look how huge that is. We're about to make our landing to Ann Arbor Municipal very shortly. So our airport's down here. We'll make a quick landing. So here we go. We're going to go take off the autopilot. Oh, I see a super pilot. I see you up here, my dude. There you are. Hello, super pilot. I see you, my dude. So we're about to make our landing here. So here you go. We're about to make our landing here in Ann Arbor. So here we go in our municipal. And we're about to make our landing here this afternoon. So this is our last stop, everyone. I hope you'll enjoy this trip. There we go. We're finally down. So welcome to Ann Arbor, everyone. And that's it. So guys, thank you all so much for coming here today on this game day flight. I had a ton of fun here covering the Ohio State-Michigan game. Lots of fun, of course. We'll be back on Sunday to cover our National Park series. We're going to be covering Rocky Mountain National Park in beautiful Colorado. So we're going to go and say goodbye, everyone. We're going to see you at the MSS official stream. They're doing a flying in Antarctica, so we'll see you all then and have a fantastic start to your weekend. Take care, guys, and have a great day. Goodbye, everyone.